Ever since Cloud9 announced the Zven King roster change 2.5 weeks ago, I've been pushing the perspective that this wasn't just a Zven demotion due to some unspecified internal issues, but that King did his part to earn this promotion, and that he's very much an LCS quality bot laner. Now that we've seen King's first 2 weeks in the LCS, we're starting to see his strengths as a player and his fit with the team, but we're also seeing some issues he needs to work on, and not the issues I would have expected from him. Let's take a quick step back and get familiar with King as a player. He's a long-standing Oceanic veteran who has been playing pro since late 2014. He's gone to 2 MSIs and 3 World Championships, but he's still only 23, about 8 months younger than Zven. King was the best player in Academy last year and one of the best this spring. He's best known for generating leads in lane, and you can see that from his stats over the past few years. He averaged above plus 300 gold plus experience difference at 10 minutes in almost every regular season, both in his final year in the OPL and in his 2 spring splits in NA Academy. Note that he wasn't able to play in summer 2020 due to visa issues. The 2019 summer split stands out as an anomaly, but when we look at King's champion pool that split, we see 4 games of bot lane Sona. Once those are removed, his GXD10 climbs to plus 53. That's still behind his usual pace, so let's add in another piece of context. Summer 2019 is the split where Fudge was promoted onto Mammoth's main team alongside King, and he also struggled in lane during the regular season, with a negative 156 GXD10, before figuring things out for the playoffs and turning those numbers around. By the time King and Fudge moved over to North America together to join Cloud9 Academy, they had both gotten their laning back on track. Naturally, the move from Academy into LCS is going to bring some stiffer laning opposition. We saw that with Fudge, who really struggled in the top lane 1v1s early on and still loses a lot of lane matchups harder than he should.
Fudge?
Oh, is he just gonna die? That hop is perfect. He's gone now. Yeah, no flash. First blood.
So it isn't surprising that King's laning stats would take a hit, but the size of that hit so far is a bit concerning. Sure, King has played 1 game on Senna, so we can remove that from the sample. That's better, but it's still a huge drop-off from what we might want to see. So what's going wrong? King's laning deficits are partly coming from factors outside of his control, and partly from fundamental errors that he and Vulcan shouldn't be making. Some of the things King can't really control include the matchups he's playing in, and the amount of jungle attention he and Vulcan receive to allow them to play the lane proactively. C9 are mostly putting King into weak side situations, both from the draft and from Blabber's pathing, as we can see from a map of Blabber's pre-15-minute kills and assists. That isn't too surprising, since C9's greatest success all year has come from playing through mid lane and camping for Fudge. But King and Vulcan are also giving away big advantages to opposing bot lanes with poor wave management. Let's take an example from the game against 100 Thieves. Around 4.5 minutes into the game, King is slightly behind because he and Vulcan have been playing weak side so far. FBI and Huhi are building a slow push, and Blabber is pathing down to cover a potential tower dive. When Vulcan sees Huhi face-checking Tribrush, he and Blabber go aggressive to try to punish. They force Huhi out of lane and get some summoner spells, but then King, Vulcan, and Blabber make a big mistake. Instead of working together to push out the lane, which should be safe since Huhi's health is so low, they just clear the remaining minions and all recall. FBI stands in lane and holds the C9 minions, even using his Varus Q to stall out King's recall. Then FBI recalls as well. This leads to a stacked C9 wave that slowly pushes into 100 Thieves' turret, denying a ton of minions from King, including a cannon. And not only that, but when King and Vulcan try to use the eventual bounced wave to set up a roam from Perks and a gank from Blabber, 100 Thieves use the lane priority they have from that bounce to jump Perks in the river for a kill. By the time this sequence is played out, King is down 15 CS and FBI has level 6 advantage, which he and Huhi use shortly afterwards to force a bad recall, deny another cannon minion, and take a turret plate. This sequence not only led King to lose lane harder than he needed to, it also prevented Blabber and Perks from making plays into the bot side using mid-prio the way they wanted. Of course, it didn't help that Fudge got solo killed way before any of this, or that Perks and Blabber straight up lost the mid 2v2s, but King and Vulcan needed to show better recognition of these wave mechanics to keep their team in this game. Poor laning doesn't necessarily mean King is playing badly overall. C9 are still doing pretty well, with a 4-2 record so far this summer, and they're doing it by playing compositions where King and Vulcan's laning isn't really a win condition. Perks, Fudge, and Blabber are taking the reins, while King is being asked to play safe, stay relevant, and contribute to teamfights, which is the bulk of what Zven was asked to do as well. Sure, King is making some mistakes outside of laning, like greeting for a jungle camp against CLG and giving away a free death, but Zven has been prone to mistakes of his own, so we can't just use visible mistakes as a way to differentiate the two players. To flesh out our understanding of how well King is filling Zven's shoes, we can compare King's stats in his first 6 LCS games to Zven's stats from the spring regular season. We already know his laning is suffering not only compared to Zven, but compared to King's own expectations. But we can also see that Zven picked up slightly more farm than King has been, while King has provided more damage output, led by a Kog'Maw game where he put out 818 damage per minute. And on top of that, King is contributing only slightly less kill participation than Zven, but with a drastically lower death share. Since he's giving up far fewer deaths while still putting out lots of damage, he's been able to rack up an 8.3 KDA through 6 games. Those numbers aren't coming from being a KDA player either, if you look at what he's willing to do on Kai'Sa, for better or for worse.
They get the chase down, one auto will kill him a flash, and the chase in, King finds it. Stunned into the turret though, and he's gonna be locked down.
Zven is a tough act to follow, but King is doing quite well with his opportunity so far, and he's doing it in a weak side, scaling role that hasn't historically been his preferred way to play. King and Vulcan are a new duo, and they need to keep grinding to improve their laning together and show that they can reliably generate 2v2 leads, which would give Blabber an incentive to design more of his jungle pathing around using their advantages. If they can do that, it could unlock King's comfort zone and give Cloud9 more strategic options. It would be a reach right now to say that King could potentially become an individual upgrade over Zven, but who knows, maybe decreasing their average player age and adding more Australian accents will turn out to be Cloud9's ultimate recipe for success.
Oh my gosh, it's so good to be back in these games, watching them, enjoying them, interviewing people after them. It's fantastic. Speaking of good in games, Alienware, in partnership with Team Liquid, has now officially launched Good in Gaming, which is an initiative in order to provide opportunities and programs to people who seek to grow, learn, network, and compete in the esports industry. They've got all sorts of cool stuff like tournaments, mentorships, scholarships, all this kind of stuff. It's really cool to see what they're doing. You can head on over to alienware.com/goodingaming. I'd recommend you do it because it's just neat to see this program that they've been able to build out to support the next generation of esports industry folks. Because let's be clear, I'm getting kind of tired. I don't know how much longer I can do this. It's a pain in the butt. You guys don't subscribe. No, I'm just kidding. But if you do want to subscribe, that would be cool. Either way, I'm so happy to be back making this content. And shout out to Alienware for Good in Gaming. Awesome to see.